What I want to say to you is, obviously, Manchester United, Ed Woodward has come under a lot of fire for Manchester United transfer dealings, and at one point it kind of looked like United had like won COVID, because it was like the time to act ethically as a club. Manchester United did lots of good things in that period, fan outreach, didn't furlough people like other big Premier League clubs at least tried to. Signed Van der Beek, which brought him a little bit of goodwill. But like since then, Gary Neville has said like Manchester United's dealings have been appalling. This is the easiest window in Premier League history to own. But do you think Manchester United were trying to act a little bit more ethically, and then their counterparts like stole in on them? Like Tottenham have borrowed 175 million from the bank of whatever, and then used that to kind of foot transfers. I feel like United were thinking about being conservative, and then they've been caught a little bit cold in that regard.
I don't think they expected other teams to do as much business as they have. I agree with you. And there are arguments, look, people will batter the board and Ed Woodward and the Glazers and Ollie, whoever's involved in those transfer dealings, be it Matt Judge or Ed Woodward. But there are explanations and reasons that you can rightly point to. Manchester United losing more money than any other club during COVID in the Premier League.
It's because they make more, right?
Because they make more effectively.
They're not, that's not actually true, right?
Well, in terms of like...
They're missing out on
they're missing out on that money.
But proportionally, the London clubs are missing out on more, right? Because Arsenal are more reliant on matchday revenue than any club in the league, and I think Spurs are going that way as well, because their fees are so high, whereas United still have like... endless, like they're tractor dealers in like China deals, or whatever. Like they do have sources of revenue.
Like that amount of money missed. That's what they're effectively pointing to, isn't it? Like £5 million every time United don't have fans in Old Trafford.
It's a difficult angle to work. What I'm trying to do is kind of bring a sense of balance, I guess. In the,
but no, I agree with Gary. I really agree with Gary.
Do they deserve any leeway? But then
they don't.
And you look at the Glazers. The Glazers are going to cost Manchester United more than COVID is ever going to, right? They've taken like 1.5 billion out of the club in 15 years. Like you'll ride this storm for a year, 2 years, but then your bottom line is still going to be really healthy.
It's a very consistent pattern. It's a very, very consistent pattern with Manchester United, their managers, and the transfer dealings. Even pre-COVID, it's struggle. Sign players, the next season after that get top four, get into the Champions League, sign no one. Struggle, sign players, get into the Champions League, sign no one. It's a very consistent pattern. It's been that way. If you go back to like Jose era, when his first season, or second season I think it was, when he got that group of players through the door that's quite strong, and the second season...
Although he did want Boateng, and I feel like Woodward told him no, right, to signing Jerome Boateng from Bayern Munich, and I feel like Bayern Munich. And you've got a head of global scouting.
But Ollie's not asking for Boateng. He's asking for, like Pato said, the best young player in world football, effectively, who was getting.
Yeah, he fits the profile.
But this is the rare situation where like the Man United signing and the sensible signing line up. Like the problem that you've had in recent years is, you say like, oh well, we go and sign players and then get into the top four, but often those players are signed with a real short-term eye, and that is where the lack of a director of football really hurts you. Because we can look at players for Man United more than almost any other club and say that guy's not a Man United signing. And the thing is, some of those players would develop into Man United players. Like there are centre backs out there who you can get for 20 to 30 mil who would definitely help Man United grow into a really, really good side. But because they tend to go and get guys who are already peak, then by the time they're back in the Champions League, those guys are post-peak. You can't really sell them. You've got a squad full of ageing players on huge contracts.
But you can
they're always prestige signings. But
Ollie has a decent track record. Right. His first summer was decent. His January window was decent.
Yeah,
he hasn't made too many errors. Maybe you can point to Dan James being not the player they thought he was going to be, and it didn't quite work out. But you'd say Maguire gets battered, was a relative success if an overpayment. It's not his fault.
But that's my issue. That it was an overpayment. Like I think I've got no issue with Maguire signing in terms of his output on the pitch, but I think that for that amount of money, you could have bought a defensive midfielder and a centre back, and probably not have been, and probably have been maybe even slightly better. But my issue is not with Solskjaer there. My issue is with the fact that there's no overarching plan, because when you look at the money Man United have spent over the last 10 years, have they spent enough to be a top quality side? Yes, definitely.
But that's the sporting director.
And you know, like when you see like Diogo Jota be available for like 45 mil, that is the sort of thing. That's the reason that I'm so harsh on signings like the Pepe signing, and that is the reason as well I can understand not paying 40 for Ismaila Sarr, because you say Jota is 45 million pounds. Like that is a signing Man United could make, who would be phenomenal for them.
Yeah, they've spent $1 billion since 2013.
Awful.
And like the new information I learned at home that like we want to not drill into Team FD, but like the dynamic at Manchester United, I found it made a little bit more sense as to why they hadn't pursued the director of football when I sort of looked into it. They have
Matt Judge, Ed Woodward.
They had a head of global scouting, which is Marcel Bout, I believe his name is. I've sort of lost it on the page here. Marcel Bout, head of global scouting. Ollie runs the ship a little bit like Fergie in that he sort of hands off the day-to-day coaching to other people and does the bigger picture thinking, right? Which is why we always see Ollie at various games, like he's doing scouting firsthand. You've already mentioned Matt Judge is head of commercial something or other, and Ed Woodward's the vice chairman, right?
Yeah, but Matt Judge effectively leads our transfer.
Yeah, so there's like a senior leadership team who've kind of shared responsibilities and clear lines of division, let's say. Apparently Ed Woodward does still struggle to relinquish power, does take on too much, but there's like enough heads there to be able to identify talent. So that's why they didn't hire Campos or Antero Henrique, who was at Monaco, right, and signed Mbappe. I think he was interviewed for it as well, and Paul Mitchell, like
who's now at Monaco.
So like when people say, "Oh man, just go and get a sporting director," and that'll resolve the issue. It's like there's already enough senior heads doing what a sporting director would do. I think whether they're exceptional at their job or not is a different question. But like, I suppose another question is like, is Ollie a sufficiently good enough coach to turn very good players into title-winning players? But
it's a difficult question to answer with Ollie,
really
isn't it? Because I think we would all have said last season that if Pochettino's available, at some stage we probably said, look, you get Pochettino. But having said that,
literally that's all we said all last season.
But having said that, you can't take away from the fact that Ollie has noticeably improved this team. He was towards the back end of last season in an unsackable position. I think we were on a 21-game win streak. He'd noticeably improved, I'd say, Rashford, Martial, Greenwood. I think Scott McTominay definitely improved. Bruno Fernandes was an exceptional signing and got better and better under him.
I think some of those you're getting credit just for the fact that like you're there while they turn 20, 22, 23. Yeah. So like Rashford I think would have developed like regardless of who was there in a way,
but
because
Martial,
he was hitting that age.
But then Martial I don't think would have. Martial was fully coasting under some of his previous managers and for the national team, and I think
his
really
management definitely deserves praise. Like the players clearly like him, which wasn't the case, which is a massive turnaround from Jose. But I'm a little bit more unforgiving of his record. And I just think that you take the games against Brighton into consideration, and yes, small sample size, a little bit of tunnel vision here because we're not very far into the season, and Manchester United are weeks behind other teams in terms of their preparation. But I watched them play against Brighton, two different sides, in the Carabao Cup and the Premier League, and they have a much more coherent system. They're playing better football than Manchester United, and I just had the kind of stark realisation that Man United, I feel like their sense of play, their style of play, not really much clearer than it was a year ago. And we were saying this kind of 6, 8, 12 months into Ollie's tenure as well. And I just feel to be like comprehensively outplayed by a team of that calibre. That's not to disrespect Brighton, a team that kind of should be finishing mid-table.
Yeah.
I thought just early alarm bells. I don't know if I'm being an alarmist here.
After the Palace loss at home as well, which was like a deserved loss.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of caveats though. I do think towards the United start to the season, I really do think that fitness and stuff like that is playing a big problem with Manchester United right now. Yeah. Because I don't want to keep bringing back towards the end of last season, but towards the end of last season, we did have a very coherent system, a very clear 4-2-3-1 that we were playing, and it was getting the best out of Bruno, was getting the best out of Martial.
Was it not just Bruno stitching it together though?
And also lots of pens.
I suppose Matic played well.
Matic was playing much better.
I just feel like Potter's a better manager than Solskjaer and Lampard.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I mean, but this is the thing, right, about Ollie. You're like, you're never going to win the league with Ollie. For you to win the league with Ollie, you would have to have a significant talent advantage on all the clubs around you, I think.
Yeah.
And you're never going to. Like, you're never
But
going to have a better squad
bigger
than City
problems
or Liverpool.
than just that at the moment, don't they?
Agreed.
Ollie is smoothing over a lot of issues
And,
at United.
well, agreed, but then like your recruitment needs to be better then. Like, and it just still feels like this summer they looked at the squad and they were like, nah, we won't get a defensive midfielder. Like,
so what areas would you have improved? What areas would you have looked to improve if you were in that director of football role and you were fixing United? What are the main areas you'd have
I'd have got a left back, a centre back,
right,
a defensive midfielder, and a right winger.